Now, how did Governor DeSantis, how he's expected to announce on Twitter? What do you think is going to be the thoughts on that? How are people going to take that?
I mean, Elon Musk has 140 million followers on Twitter, and these are not normal people. These are people who are more partisan, more extreme, more conservative. And I think the thought behind it is that this is exactly the kind of people that DeSantis might be trying to reach in the primary. These are primary voters. And, when Tucker Carlson left Fox News, he said that Twitter was one of the last places with free speech. That might be right or wrong, but that is exactly what DeSantis is trying to lean into as he gets ready for this launch.
So critics have said that the announcement is just too online. Is there a risk with this announcement not working?
I think there's definitely a risk with the general election. I mean, these are not a representative audience for the rest of the country. And, if DeSantis is able to make that case and kind of navigate the waters and defeat Trump in the primaries, he's going to have to make the case that his agenda, his Make America Florida agenda, is going to work for the rest of America. And that, remains to be seen.
Well, we all know that DeSantis's poll numbers have taken quite a hit. The question becomes, did he wait too long on the sidelines? Is that going to affect him in the race?
So he's still second in the polls. He's doing this multi-day rollout that's going to buy him some time. I mean, he hasn't announced it, and yet we're talking about it, right? And so he is one of the last to enter the race. As you can see here, there's a number of GOP candidates in a very crowded field that includes former President Trump. So he does have some room to make up here. And so I think we'll see how this goes. There's going to be a lot of eyes on this announcement.
Sophia, so there is a new report out there saying that there's more than 100 ex-Trump administration officials. They've lined up to endorse DeSantis. Well, many Republicans now say he is Trump without the baggage. Now, do you think that this is the winning message to GOP primary voters?
I think he is definitely in agreement with a lot of Trump's policies. In fact, what he's been trying to sell on the trail, even before he's announced, is that he is able to execute on a lot of the policy that he's promised in Florida, that he's a doer. And so he's definitely trying to win over a lot of the MAGA voters. And as for the officials, this is a class that might be looking for someone who's younger, someone who is more normal than Trump. And so I'm not surprised. There's been, a number of former Trump officials who have now come out in support of DeSantis.
So there's a lot of questions about how DeSantis campaign, how they will handle the former president and his key supporter base. So what indications do we have about DeSantis and how likely he is to woo former Trump's voters to his candidacy?
It all looks like he is going to go 100% in for former President Trump's base. I mean, he is tacking to the right of Trump. He says that he will actually build the wall, promising to send some of his Florida workers to the southern border to build that wall. He's also very much for cutting spending and taxes. He is, campaigning on this message that what he's done in Florida with banning books, with, banning discussions about gender transitions and certain issues around race in schools and with corporate training, that those are all things that he wants for the rest of the country. And he's banking on kind of making that argument. And, as for Trump, he hasn't directly named Trump all that much, but he's certainly saying that, look, I have a leadership style that isn't going to count on leaks and drama. And so, there are some ways in which indirectly DeSantis has been trying to present himself as an alternative to Trump while supporting those conservative values and conservative policy.
Thanks for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find NewsNation in your cable lineup. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-based, unbiased coverage.